Well, there have been a lot of years and a lot of miles that have been between the two of us that are talking right now. I'm happy to welcome Greg Greenway. Hi, Greg. How are you?
I'm great, man. Good to see you. Been a
It has
long,
been
long time.
way long. So um, let's go back a little bit here. You came to Boston from the Tidewater region of this country. That's the portion of Virginia. How did you
Uh,
wind up?
you gotta get your. I come from the Piedmont. I
Oh,
come
okay.
from
Talk to me.
Richmond. Richmond is in the Piedmont. Tidewater would be Norfolk.
Oh, gotcha. A little bit south. So I didn't realize that dividing line was quite right there.
Oh, it's a cultural line too. So just that's why a Virginia person would correct you.
Okay, that's important too. Nonetheless, from Virginia, you found your way to Boston. Tell me a little bit about Virginia and how you found your way up here.
Well, in college, I started a coffee house just to give people a place to play, and I moved it around from one place to the other. And there was a woman working for the college, William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, who was from Lawrence, Mass. And she said to me, "You just got to go to Boston. It's just made for you. 200 colleges, college students everywhere. There's music everywhere." So my spring break of my senior year in college, I hitchhiked with my roommate up to Boston, believe it or not. And it was, of course, 6 degrees and the wind was blowing 30 miles an hour. My welcome to Boston, but I was let off by two MIT students right across the bridge from Harvard Square, walked across the Charles, froze my tail off. But I walked past a demonstration against Gallo wine, believe it or not, and I just said, "These are my people." So I fell in love with Boston immediately and moved up here in 1976.
And at some point up here, you formed yourself a band, Trace of Red, if I remember right.
Well, yeah, it's a long history. But yeah, I was in rock bands. You know, was doing the acoustic songwriter thing, which is my thing, which is how I grew up. But the country had just, once the Reagan administration moved in, everything changed in the 80s. And it became almost impossible. All the venues closed in Boston, very few of them stayed open. And it just seemed like it was kind of a dead issue. So I was inspired. You don't need to go into that, but so I played rock music for a few years, but I was always a stranger in a strange land. I never was a different writer, but I was just using a different vocabulary musically. So at a certain point, I realized that no, they don't want me and I don't want them. And so I was talking to my friends, and my friend Karen Darcy said, the Old Vienna Coffeehouse out in Southborough has a really great open mic. You should go play there. And I'm like, okay. So I went, and you were doing the sound, and you were running the show that night. Yeah, and I think I played two or three songs, and we talked afterwards, and you said, I think I've heard your name somewhere. And that was pretty interesting. And you called me back a few days later and you went, "Oh, yeah, I did an interview with David Wilcox." And I asked him, or um, Brad Paul asked him what his influences were. And Wilcox listed me as one of his influences. So you'd heard my name said by David Wilcox. So, and what it was is David used to come to see me at the Nameless Coffee House, and he'd never seen anybody playing open tunings before. So
Um,
that really stuck with him. So he kept my name there long enough for that anyway. And since then, we've had a relationship, musical one, and I'll see him again at Swananoa Gathering in July.
I remember when you came to the open mic, you were one of the select few folks. There was some amazing talent that used to walk through there on a typical Thursday night. It was really rich with some amazing folks who are now selling out coffee houses. But
Yeah.
there were some folks who just kind of shined above, and you were one of those folks that really caught my attention. We had a chance to do a little bit of work together, and that was a lot of fun. So the old Vienna, how did that change the trajectory of your career there?
Well, it got me, it introduced me to an audience that I didn't see anywhere. That there was still that audience because other than Passim, and at that point, I believe Bob Donlin had moved on, and I had had a relationship with Bob and Rayanne. I was playing at the Nameless Coffee House, and I went into I was the third person in, WRR used to have on the Sunday show, they'd bring a third person in. So
Yep.
I swallowed everything, bucked up my courage and went on there on the Monday after I played and said, Mr. Donlin, I played on your Sunday show and I think I deserve a chance to play in your coffee house. And he looked at me, this could have gone either way, right?
Uh-huh.
And he went, I'll get my book. So I was like, I almost fainted. So that's how that worked. But what the Old Vienna did for me was connect me to you, and you connected me to the greater outside world because you sent my CD to Falcon Ridge Folk Festival.
Yep.
And that one thing right there probably changed my life more than anything. And the story is really funny because Sonny Oakes, who's now been my friend for 30 some years,
Mm-hmm.
was the person who was screening everybody for the Friday afternoon, evening, up and comers, the people you've never heard of. So here's the way this works. She was ready to toss my CD into the X pile. Nope. And because she didn't like the way I looked.
Oh.
I had a leather coat on the cover of my Road with Walking Down. Now, that's more about her than me. But anyway, so she was ready to chuck it, and she had hired a high school kid to come over and work in her yard. And so she asked him, she said, what do you think of this music? Do you like this? He goes, oh, this guy's great. You should have him. So she picked me back up out of the pile, and that put me on the Falcon Ridge stage. And from then, Ann and Bub, were my managers for a little bit. And they helped me get up there. And finally, that hooked me up to Fleming Tamulevich, which got me across the country.
Yep. I remember it was fun. I got to sit in through most of your recordings while you were doing A Road Worth Walking Down, and in the studio, just sitting in the back and watching the whole process take place. It was a lot of fun. And that album really, still has a special place in my heart for it. So your career has had a couple of some pretty significant events since that whole time in the 90s, the early 90s, the late 80s, when things. I actually have a couple of flyers here that from the Old Vienna. Here you are. I'm going to put these up here in a second, but here you are with a feature act, and this is in April of 1991, and you're surrounded in here by Alison Krauss, Cheryl Wheeler, Rick Danko from the band, Mr. Wilcox below you, local guy Duke Levine, who's on tour with Bonnie Raitt or whoever that is. So, you're in some pretty good company there. But since then,
that was an incredible experience. And I mean, I remember I opened for Karl Ivanov, and that was something because, the dressing room was the office.
Yep.
And there was not a lot of room in there. And man, she just vibed me right out the door. She did not want me to be in that room at all. So I basically stood at the top of the stair the entire time, to wait to go on. But that's the way that was.
Yeah, it's a very small room, only sat about 125 people on a good day, and that was pretty comfy.
Yeah,
But I want to get to you've worked as a trio for a time, and then I want to kind of get into what you're doing with Reggie Harris as well.
Yeah, for 8 years I was with Joe Jenks and Pat Wichter and Brother Son, and we went all over the place. We played as far away as Vancouver Folk Festival on Vancouver Island, South Florida Folk Festival. I believe we did that. I did that, I know for sure. But we covered, North America, played in Canada and the U.S., and people just loved that harmony. And that was it was an excellent time. It made me a far, far better singer, and for which I'm very proud. I sing better and play better than I ever have in my entire life. So I'm very, very happy about the way that's gone. But after we ended that on November 17th, 2018, that gave Reggie Harris and I the opportunity to work together on something that just naturally fell in our lap. We were born 3 days apart, and me being from the ex-capital of the Confederacy, Richmond, Virginia, we found out that his ancestry came from a plantation 15 miles outside of Richmond, that his great-great-great-grandfather was a Confederate brigadier general who had 6 children via an enslaved woman, Bibhana Hewlett.
Wow.
So, but we met, strangely enough, doing a Phil Oakes songline. It all ties together at the village gate in Greenwich Village. And back then, Sonny was booking, a ton of people, so there's plenty of room to sit plenty of time to sit in the green room and talk. So in 10 minutes, Reggie and I were talking about race, just because it's been such a prevalent part in our life. The year that we were in school, that the Eastern school systems were integrating for the first time. There were 68, there were riots. I was in the middle of a riot, so was Reggie. So there was a lot of stuff that we had in common. And then we realized that with this story in place and the songs we had written and what we talked about, that we needed to tell people about this. And this was even before 2016, before November 2016, before the obvious delineation in culture. But we needed to talk about this because people need a threshold from which to talk about and think about race in America. It's the elephant in the room. So, and here we are with this incredible story, this incredible friendship of 35 years. And this is what we do. We tell our story and we sing the songs and we talk, and I talk about, what happened to me, what I was handed and what I do with it. I was handed the story of the Lost Cause. Those statues on Monument Avenue were beautiful works of art, and amazingly to turn around now to be happy that they're all torn down. So, it's like what I wrote in a song that's on my newest record, that, I'm still standing after all this time. It's the statues that have fallen in that hometown of mine.
That's a great thought there. I love the thought that you and Reggie, black and white, are sharing something that's so close to both of you, and yet at the same time so culturally hard to understand for so much of us in this country. And you have a wonderful platform to share that with. That's just a great place to be.
It's a gift. It's a gift, and I think that's why we saw it as that. And we took a road trip. We went to New Orleans, 23-hour drive. To talk about this and to do some stuff down there, and went to the Whitney Plantation and Slavery Museum, and in talking about it, we sort of did the prototype of Deeper Than the Skin, and people have loved it. It's been so well received because we're not pointing fingers at anybody. We are just telling you what we saw and how it changed us and what we went through. And so many people have, it gives people permission to think about their story, because we're not holding ourselves up as experts on anything except what happened to us.
When you're touring together, how is that built so folks have a chance to know what to look for in their calendars? And
it's Deeper Than the Skin, presented by Reggie Harris and Greg Greenway, and we have a website, deeperthantheskin.com. And people forget to put the in there for some reason. We get introduced a million times Deeper Than Skin, which sounds terrible to me. Deeper Than the Skin and .com. That's where you can find us. And we actually recorded in 2019, we recorded a studio version of what we do, and containing both the music and the talks that we give. And Reggie's story, as you can imagine, is just remarkable because part of it is a song called Hickory Hill, which is the name of the plantation that is about 7 miles or so that way from where I'm sitting right now. But he met his white cousins through some incredible, luck. He hooked up with his white cousins, and they went, one of them, and he walked on that plantation together.
wow,
Yeah, pretty
fascinating.
remarkable. Yeah, and the statue of his great-great-great-grandfather was in Monroe Park in Richmond, and when all the statues came down, it was torn down. And subsequently, both the CNN and the New York Times interviewed Reggie and his white cousin about this. So just a remarkable story.
I think it's fascinating that you and Reggie found each other, but it's also so appropriate. I've always known how passionate you are about the causes that you stand for, and you're all in when you do. And your platform as a songwriter reaches a lot of people and can change some minds. So I've always been grateful for your music for that.
Well, thank you. I used to sit on the edge of my bed, at Hillcrest Road in Richmond, a long time ago, and listen to Richie Havens, black man from Bedford-Stuyvesant, sang a song called The Klan. And that was the news for me, that in their Eric Anderson record, with Thirsty Boots, which is about civil rights marchers. I learned to pick that song before I even knew what it was about. So I'm just passing on, what was handed to what helped me get out of what it was handed to me. And it's never a day that I don't walk into a venue when I think that I might do the same thing for somebody else.
That's great, Greg. Hey, it's really nice to talk to you. I'm going to make sure I catch the show next time you're up in our way. And real sorry that we're not going to get a chance to have you join us on the show, but it's been great talking to you. Any passing thoughts as we celebrate the Old Vienna with this video?
I just want to say what a special time that was, and how many really remarkably talented people were in that room. I mean, as you said, they're filling coffee houses and traveling nationally. People like Martin Sexton was there, and one of the greatest singers I've ever heard. And, incredible people I met through that scene at that time. Jonathan Brooke, one of the most talented people I've ever met and talked music with, and of course, that was just a remarkable time, and it pushed us. And what I really found out as I started touring nationally is just exactly how special that scene was, and the Old Vienna was right in the middle of that. Hey, this is Greg Greenway. The Old Vienna has a special place in my heart, as it does, I know, for many, many of you. I met some incredible musicians there, made some lifelong friends there, and have some memories that I will never, ever, ever forget. So on Saturday, August 17th in Hopkinton, Massachusetts, there's going to be a get-together of some of those folks who made that place so happening. And of course, it has to be paid for. So drop in a dime in the old GoFundMe campaign. The information's at the bottom of your screen. Would be really wonderful. The Old Vienna. Boston was this very special scene of music back then, and the Old Vienna was right in the middle of it.
I won't be bought. I won't be broken. Even though, yes, I know I'm the living hell, for the ones who are holding the keys to myself.